In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our Township website. Please all stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Cohen? Here. Ms. Purvis? Here. Here. Deputy Mayor Naya? Mayor Megan? Here. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to make a motion to revise the agenda to push all the committee minutes on for consideration at our meeting this evening to our next meeting on March 7th. May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call. Oh, no. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Can we just explain why or?
Christine, would you like to do that, please? Explain to her,
No,
Mr.
let me
Marizini.
take that burden.
Good.
The reason is that we have the fact that there are meeting minutes to be approved, and there's not people from those meetings that are in a majority here. So we're working on the legal way around that, and it's not straightforward.
Great. And I think it's just like important when we do that, just to let everybody know why we're doing it.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, so now
We already did it. Yes.
we did, yes. Okay. I'm going to now refer to Chief Gelfetter about the promotions of members of our police department, resolution 23-069. Chief
I'd like
Gelfetter.
to start by thanking the committee for their consideration on the promotions tonight. Tonight we're gonna have two promotions, Detective Sergeant Barbosa to Sergeant and Lorenzo Grant. First I'll start with Detective Barbosa. Detective Barbosa was born in Andorra. He was a Portuguese descent. He went to Elizabeth High School and graduated in 2001.
YouTube viewers. In 2014, he graduated from Monmouth County Police Academy and became a corrections officer in Union County. In 2015, he graduated from the Stanmore Police Academy, became a sheriff's officer and a county police officer for Union County. In 2016, he was hired and transferred to the Millburn Police Department and was assigned to the Patrol Division. For the last 3 years, he's been our juvenile detective, which includes being a liaison between our department and the Millburn school system. He's a member of our honor guard, hostage negotiation team, and he's a DARE teacher. Detective Barbosa is here with several close family members and friends. Sergeant Lorenzo Grant. He's a graduate from Murray Bertram High School in New York City. He attended NY City Technical College. He has worked in the financial district for over 12 years as an employee of the New York Mercantile Exchange. In July of 2001, he changed his career path and was selected as a Plainfield police recruit and attended the Stanmore Police Academy. And after graduation, he was assigned to the Patrol Division. After 3 years of service in Plainfield, Sergeant Graham transferred to Millburn in April 2004 and was assigned to the Patrol Division. In 2015, he was promoted to sergeant and has worked in our Patrol Division since. Lorenzo is a former member of our ESU team, DARE instructor, CPR instructor, and currently holds an EMT certificate. Lorenzo is joined by friends Leslie and his nephew Calvin.
May I have a motion to approve resolution 23-069, which confirms the promotions?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Purvis?
Yes.
Ms. Romano?
Yes.
Mayor Megan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gaddy, you'll now issue the oaths of office.
I state your name,
I, Socrates Barbosa,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution
I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Police Sergeant
the duties of Police Sergeant
of the Milburn Township Police Department
of the Milburn Township Police Department
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. State your name,
I, Lorenzo Graham,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution
I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Police Lieutenant
the duties of Police Lieutenant
of the Milburn Township Police Department
of the Milburn Township Police Department
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
They're almost pinned. That's great. Awesome. Good job. Good job.
Just make believe you're putting it back on.
Congratulations.
Oh my God.
Brandon.
This is my favorite, one of my favorite days. Only for Monday. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you'd all love to stay, but we're going to have a 2-minute break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start our meeting back up and we're going to go to reports.
That's not Milburn's fault.
You ready? Ms. Prupus, anything to report on?
Yes, on Monday, February
Excuse me?
27th, the two-way traffic subcommittee is meeting with Colliers to go over their report. And I guess at that point, we'll see if it needs any more revisions before it comes to us.
Tweaking. Awesome. So that's a two-way traffic for Essex.
On Essex and Spring.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. Mr. Cohen?
Yes, so we had a meeting of the CETA committee, the Cultural Engagement Committee. So I'm just going to give a little update on Founding Day, which is scheduled for April 22nd, rain day of Sunday, the 23rd. It's going to be like a huge event. There's a bunch of local organizations that are joining with CETA to put in on this event, including the Boy Scouts, the Food Pantry, the Green Team, the Environmental Commission, Explore Milburn Short Hills, the Historical Society, the Paper Mill Playhouse, the Shade Tree Commission, and the Short Hills Garden Club. There's going to be a ton of events going on throughout the day, including an art festival, a music concert, guided tours. It's going to be a really huge event, even bigger than last year. So I would encourage everybody to attend. That's one thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the Arboretum Committee met as well since the last meeting. And they've opened the signups for the camps, for the children's camps for April and for the summer. Enrollment is going well. They're not full yet, but it's going to be full pretty soon. So if you are interested in sending your children to one of those camps that are very well received, I would encourage you to register as soon as you can because they were pretty close to full.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Romano?
Thank you. We met, Explore Milburn Short Hills met last week, and I have some updates. Explore hosted the first of 5 educational classes for minority, women, and immigrant business owners in partnership with the Union County EDC and our sponsors, Citizens Bank Foundation. We held our first session last week on tax preparation. The next class will be on March 22nd at 5:30 and focused on how to write a business plan. We also are hosting a class for all members of the Special Improvement District focused on search engine optimization. The class will be offered both in person and on Zoom on March 3rd at 9 a.m. Our first merchant mixer of the year will be at 5 p.m. on March 9th at Interior Motif located at 519 Milburn Avenue in the Upper Milburn Avenue District. This new business features high-end window treatments and technology. The event will have high-end supercars on display, a live podcast by Scary Jones of Z100 Radio, HGTV stars, and a raffle worth over $12,000. Restaurant Week. Explore is launching Milburn Restaurant Week between March 20th and 26th. 10 restaurants, including Common Law, The Standard, Moonshine, Splurge Bakery, Unwind Boutique, and Taste Buddy are already signed up. To participate as a restaurant, email Amanda at exploremilburnshorthills.org. And you can visit the events webpage at restaurantweek/exploremilburnshorthills.org. To reserve in the other things that I mentioned, you can reach out to Steve at exploremilburnshorthills.org. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Yes, Michael.
I just
Mr.
wanted to
Collins.
mention also for Founding Day, if you're interested in volunteering, and they certainly do need to have a bunch of volunteers, please email Amanda at exploremilburnshorthills.com. Thank you, Annette, for reminding me.
Thank you. Mr. Mariziti?
I have nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. I have several reports. First, just wanted to report, since Mr. Benaya could not be at the meeting tonight, about the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board. We had our first meeting last week and discussed future meeting dates. Future meeting dates will be held on the second Tuesday of each month through June. at 9 a.m. via Zoom. That information will be posted to the website as well as the Zoom link for those meetings. Just by way of a quick update on pedestrian safety, we did put in 2 pedestrian activated signs, one on White Oak Ridge Road in Addison and one on Marion and Old Short Hills Road. The goal is to continue that program this year as we go through the budget process and add additional signs throughout the township. The Mayor's Rahway River Coalition met on Friday, February 17th. Currently, they are working with the Army Corps of Engineer, who has received approval to move forward with the Rahway River Basin Fluvial Flood Risk Management Study. This has to be signed, a cost agreement has to be signed with the federal, non-federal sponsor NJDEP. So until that time, until that agreement is signed and the Mayor's Rahway has had the ability to meet with the Army Corps of Engineer, no agreements will be signed or funds allocated to that purpose until we have better direction on where the Army Corps study is going to go. The Clark and Westfield are now joining the group, at least at this point, with regard to the Army Corps of Engineers study. On February 9th, we held a public safety town hall. The police department explained the current situation occurring in town with stolen vehicles and car burglaries. The video of that town hall can be viewed on the township's YouTube channel. As a result of that public discussion, we've got a lot of different ideas and different thoughts from the public. One of which was the idea of a neighborhood watch, which does currently exist, and the police department has already been in contact with several neighborhoods and they've engaged the PD and Detective Bureau to work on that. We've added patrols throughout the municipality at varying times, but mostly in the evening with their alley lights on so they can be more recognizable as they patrol through the streets. We're continuing the special details of burglary patrol is warranted based on the activity going on in town. We had one idea about a security company that was presented to us. The police chief did reach out to them. However, he has not received a phone call back yet to follow up with that. Lastly, just want to report on the budget for 2023. We have been meeting with the finance subcommittee, which consists of Deputy Mayor Benayak, Committeeman Michael Cohen. We do plan on a budget schedule of an introduction on March 21st and a adoption on April 18th. In between those 2 meeting dates, we will have a public session for the discussion on the budget. Those are all my reports, Mayor.
Can we just touch on, we're trying to get a group together to have a seminar as well for the fair share housing piece. And can you
Yes.
tell us where we're at with that?
Yeah, so 2 things, and one is, so we have been working to try to get a seminar together on fair share housing. It's much more difficult to wrangle professionals than it is staff, which is why we were able to get out a meeting on the field discussion so quickly, because that will be all staff involved in that. And so we are still in process of getting a meeting together on fair share housing, and we'll let the public know as soon as we have it set up.
Awesome. Thank you. Just a reminder, Memorial Day parade will be held on Monday, Memorial Day, 5/29/23. And it'll start at Milburn High School and go through town and at Taylor Park. And it's always such a wonderful parade. Also this year, the Chinese American Association is having their Lunar New Year Festival on March 5th, which is Sunday, March 5th. So please note that Milburn Avenue will be closed between Spring and Main. We say 12 to 5, but they have to set up. So it's probably going to be the whole day that they'll be closed. And that's all I have on that. So there you go. Okay, public comment. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and whether you are a Milburn resident and or business owner, and speak loudly so that your comments may be understood by all and properly recorded. Please do not provide your full address, seeing our meetings are recorded and readily available to the public. For the convenience of our community, there is a remote option available. If you called in and would like to comment, please press *6 now. And if you are attending by computer or electronic device, please do click the raise hand button.
All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. Whenever an audience or committee member reads verbatim from a prepared statement, please email a copy to the Township Clerk's office at townclerk@milburntwp.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there's 30 seconds remaining. Each individual will be given 1 opportunity to make their public comment. Please be patient, and we will address each member of the public that wishes to speak. This is a business meeting, and please do not address professionals or staff directly, and please do direct all your comments to me. A reminder, we are all neighbors, and personal attacks will not be tolerated. I will now open the public comment period.
Hello, Leah Cruz. I'm a resident. Thank you for the update regarding the police and what you're planning to do. I appreciate that. And I did use the SDL form on the township website, and I reported some graffiti. I did get a response saying it was received, but I didn't even know about that. And I have been coming to the meetings for quite a while. So I was wondering if maybe one of you could explain to the public what it is, because there are a lot of concerns in town lately, and it might be nice for people to know, like, oh, I can just fill out this form rather than come to the meeting and they're nervous about getting up and speaking. So I think it's a great thing, but I didn't even know it existed. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld. I am a resident. I'm also counsel on various matters pending against the municipality. First, I commend you on the appointment of a new auditor. I have history with this auditor based on its footnotes about failure to pay long-term tax exemptions. That's why I appeared before this TC in October 2019, and I applaud them because they will give us some straight answers because they have a history of that. There was no report on a public forum that was held last week about the commercial solid waste pickup. And I'm wondering why there was no discussion about that, because there was things that came out during that there needs to be an amendment of the Title 14 of our administrative code. And there's wondering about how a notice went out to change the commercial solid waste pickup prior to amending the Title 14. When you look at I feel for the businesses, I'm a former business owner, that there's a lot of things besides the SID assessment. We have now the shifting of the commercial solid waste pickup. We have insurance registration that's required by the state. There's going to probably be a lead paint inspection fees on apartments. And based on today's notice in the Star Ledger, there's going to be an increase in our county portion of taxes. So I think you should be focusing on some of the commercial people. Regarding the virtual participation resumption resolution, look at the first paragraph. Are you making various admissions against interest that this town violated the Whispering Woods doctrine when you adopted the fair share housing settlement in the summer of 2021? We've never received an opinion from the municipal attorney as to the validity of the adoption of that matter. This ties into, you're talking about a seminar. There's a court hearing next Tuesday for a final compliance hearing. There's been a representation that there be a consent order presented to the court. The terms of that consent order have never been presented to the audience, the public. So I don't know how do you proceed forward next Tuesday, and how do you have a seminar after the fact of the final compliance hearings? This goes back to why many of the people who are in this audience today is things are happening, but the public's told after the fact, and that's not how democracy works. Finally, next week, there's going to be the Part 3 public forum. The question is, will that be virtual? Will it be recorded? I made some open requests regarding some of the backup to some of the slide deck. I have not received it. And that's sort of disheartening that there's going to be a public forum and citizens are supposed to ask questions, but we can't get the information. Just again, from last meeting, the tax appeal resolution, you've changed certain the format that you don't know the properties or the names of the people on it. And on the bill list, I'm very happy that there's disclosure that people that are on the municipal land use boards are taking the educational courses. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna address that one point real quickly because it's also that I'll explain. I'm not engaging in a dialogue. I'm just explaining this particular point. When it comes to why the mayor had stated at the meeting that we do not need your name and address anymore, there is a law that was passed called Daniel's Law, which requires that certain information be redacted based on people's filing of a desire to be off of it, such as judges, various personnel that are protected by Daniel's Law. In the effort to not have public information going out that would need to be redacted in the future, that is why we made that change, as well as why we made the change to not have people put their name and address onto the record at the meetings. Thank you. This is not a dialogue. I'm just explaining what the situation is.
Well,
This is not a dialogue.
Judiciary and police, not the people that file lawsuits against the town.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification of why you just said that now?
No.
Was that in response to?
No.
I'm just confused why you.
We'll get to it afterwards.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Orga Skoka. I'm a resident in town.
Thank you.
I'm also a volunteer with Milburn Soccer Club, and I'm currently the developmental program director for the club. And I'm here to represent Milburn Soccer Club. Our presidents, Jake Halpern and Rob Schwartz, are out on vacation, so they send their apologies. They will be here on March 2nd, but they can't be here tonight. I want to give everyone some background on Milburn Soccer Club while we talk about the fields. We're a volunteer-run non-for-profit club, the only non-for-profit club in the area. All our kids are local kids. We only accept 100% of our kids that participate in our programs, which are kindergarten through 8th grade, are actually local kids. We are the largest actually sports program in Milburn and Shore Hills currently. We're responsible for developing more Milburn high school boys and girls team than all the other programs combined. Our participation, currently we have 520 travel members. We had over 600 kids that tried out. We could only take 520. We have 37 teams. And again, those are from kindergarten, so from 6 years old through the 8th grade. We also participate, we have single day clinics, we have summer camps that we run for other kids that are not part of the program. And we have summer camps, so that's probably another 100 and 150 kids that participate in our program. Now talking about the fields, as a community focused nonprofit, we rely on Milburn to give us the fields, Obviously, the high school has priority over us, and as does the rec program. And we have to fight it out, unfortunately, with other programs, with lacrosse, with baseball, with field hockey on the fields. What happens in practice is that they give us the fields just maybe like a week before our program starts in the fall and in the spring, which creates havoc to all the families in town. You guys have to see some of the emails that we get from parents that have no idea how difficult it is to get fields in this town. Sometimes high school gives short notice, they have games, they have to schedule or reschedule, which again creates a lot of issues, and the same happens with the rec program, right? So we have to reschedule, and that creates issues not just for us, but we have other people that we play, travel teams that have to come in. We have referees, which is a headache. We have a referee shortage, so it's very difficult to find referees for soccer these days. Other limitations that we face are the use of the turf and the lighted fields. So we're going to get in the spring only one night per week the library field. Actually, we don't have the library field from Friday until the end of March, I believe, right now. So we believe that if we had better access to the fields, we're going to offer. We can probably take all the kids that we have to send back home. 100 plus kids. We can create another 8 to 10 teams. We currently don't have the capacity to take more kids. We also have kids that move into town and want to be part of our program. We have to send them back as well. Other parents have to go to for-profit clubs, and they pay 3 to 4 times more than they pay for our club, which creates a lot of financial burden on them. So we think if we have better fields, those kids will actually stay in town. Our position at this point, we don't want to take position. Milburn Soccer Club is not in a position right now. Part 3 is actually the best solution. However, we believe that more fields are needed in town, not just for us, also for lacrosse and for all the other programs, for high school, for everyone else. And we believe that there's no downside in exploring any feasibility study. We're strong believers. We're all going to be here on March 2nd, when people get back from vacation. So we think a feasibility study, which will address the fields, wherever the fields might be, is needed and necessary in this town.
And thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Sorry for going over.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Woke. I'm a resident of town. just want to thank you all. You're all volunteers, and want to thank you guys for what you do on behalf of the town. Also want to, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Just also want to thank our police department. I'm here to talk about crime and love what they do, have total respect for what they do. But I'm just here as a concerned citizen because I think we can be doing more. I appreciate, we had a meeting, I think it was last week or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I thought it was a very constructive dialogue between the police department and a bunch of concerned citizens where we all know we are facing legal issues that prevent the police department from catching criminals and incarcerating them. It's called bail reform, and we can take one path and try to reform that. That will take months, years, and may not be successful. But at that meeting, I thought we heard a lot of really interesting, innovative, creative, efficient from a cost perspective, efficient from a time perspective, ideas that could abate some of the issues that I think we're seeing in town. I think if you'd ask most of our population, are they satisfied with the level of crime? I haven't surveyed it. I've only surveyed people I associate with. It's universally, they're not satisfied. So something has to be done. And I appreciate the update that Mr. McDonald gave. But to me, with all due respect, that it sounds a lot like same old. And I say that with all due respect, but what we heard at the last meeting last week was a lot of very creative ideas. And so I'm here today not to reiterate all those ideas, but to try to come up with some public-private way where we can continue a dialogue. We can be a resource rather than a nuisance to help you come up with solutions, perhaps fund solutions. This is a very affluent town, and I think the security and safety of all is got to be one of the most highest priority for all of us. And so I would just love to see, at that meeting, I requested a bunch of data about our budgets. Just doing my own research, I've seen our police department budget is relatively flat over the last 5 years, and there hasn't been a budget request that hasn't been approved by the budget committee from the police department, which leads me to believe perhaps we should ask our community, what level of funding we would like, what level of crime do we find acceptable, and would we all want to fund that through an increase in taxes? I don't know the right answer for that, but I think we need a lot more dialogue, a lot more creativity, a lot more information. Obviously, people need to lock their doors, and that's on them, and your emails and your phone calls are helpful, but I just think we can be doing a lot more together, and I'm not asking it all to be you. It can be done together.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk.
Hi, I'm Greg Berman. I'm a resident. First off, just thank you all for having this public forum. Township committee members, mayor. I want to speak today about our township's fields. They're just increasingly unable to meet the needs of our town youth. The rec department's numbers tell the story all too well. Our fields are 123% to capacity. That works out to 44,000 hours of child field requests that are going unmet. We have fewer fields than nearby towns have, despite a much larger youth population, and we've literally added not a single township field since the 70s. And who loses? Our kids. Kids are forced to play late into the evening in the dark, as that's the only time that's available. Volunteer girls softball coaches can't secure a field just to practice throwing and catching. They're done requesting fields with bases and mounts. There's demand for soccer teams, as we just heard, that sadly are never formed as there's just not enough field space. And as our population continues to grow, it's only going to get worse. And again, who loses? Our kids. So residents look elsewhere. We practically, as a town, are keeping the Florham Park Sports Dome in business. Or worse, we're just canceling teams and practices. And our options are limited. We can't develop most existing fields. Some are wetlands, we have deed restrictions, parking's an issue. We could pursue tough but necessary choices, such as the par 3 or some other trade-off. And then there's the many school district properties that frequently go unused and unshared. High school fields are reserved in case there's a rainout or the highly unlikely event that every Milburn High School team makes it to the state championship game and needs 3 weeks of practice. We also wait way too long for the high school to inform the rec department of its regular season field needs. You heard about that already. You can't hire a youth soccer coach, a youth lacrosse coach, if you don't know what your practice schedule is. And once again, who loses? The kids. So I'm asking the Township Committee to help end this, what appears to be a cold war with the school district. Let's open the lines of communication with them. Let's get them to play ball. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon.
Hi, thank you. My name is Justin Tischauer. I'm a Milburn resident. I have two children, a 13-year-old daughter and in seventh grade and an 11-year-old son in fifth grade. Both my children are avid participants in all rec sports, and I myself have volunteered to coach in nearly any and all sports in which my kids participate. I also, like Greg and some others that spoke before, and feel very strongly that our town needs more fields. I have a short anecdote, if you'll bear with me, that I think sheds light on this issue. So the softball program in our town is pretty dreadful, as many of you may or may not know. Our girls don't start playing softball seriously until the spring of sixth grade, at which point other towns have already been playing for 4 to 5 years. So they're woefully unprepared. We parade them out to games. They lose by 10 runs, in some cases 20 runs every single game. So in an effort to close the gap and perhaps make it a better experience for our girls, I found a group of 10 talented middle school girls that wanted to form a team this fall with the hopes of practicing, getting better, and hit the spring running and potentially closing that gap against the other towns. I emailed our town rec department for a field, and it took them a month to get back to me to confirm that there was a field to use. By this point, the season was nearly over. And it was a little too late to do anything. And this wasn't because they weren't supportive of the goals. They were very supportive of the goals, and it wasn't because they were busy doing other things. It was literally they just needed a month to figure out what fields were available and allocate those fields appropriately. And this is for one girls' team for one field. Imagine if we wanted to actually have a softball program in our town and have 6 teams, for every grade, or God forbid, maybe an actual league in the fall. You can imagine how problematic that might be. And so, again, this is just softball. I think you've heard about, Greg spoke very eloquently about all the other issues and soccer as well. So I think you'll hear a similar theme from a number of folks today. And I think it's time to get our kids some more fields. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Scott Barishaw. I'm a Milburn town resident. I am the former president of the Milburn Soccer Club, so thank you for coming out and speaking. Appreciate that. I also was the co-chairman of the fundraising committee for the lights at the library field, so I've been sort of quite involved in what the town's doing about fields. I think the lights have been a raging success, but unfortunately, it means that kids are practicing very late, as people spoke about already. So, I'm here to help push the effort of more fields in the town. We're way under penetrated. I don't know if people know what goes on in other towns, have kids that play sports in other towns, but it's incredible. Like Milburn has nothing like this. So yeah, allocating some money. I don't know if the right answer is the par 3. The presentation looked pretty good to me. It doesn't make money right now, the par 3. There's not a ton of use, but there may be better options than that. There may be people that get a lot of use out of that. I don't know. I think Greg spoke a little bit about the impact it has, kids practicing late, not having enough teams, not having enough room, kids getting shut out and stuff like that. But there's really a lot of research out there when you look at it of the mental state of kids. There's a big discussion in the schools about what happens with kids and all the stress that they're under. And so it starts at a very young age. So if more kids are playing sports, I think we can avoid a lot of the issues that we're talking about in town, at the schools, at all different levels, about the stress that they're under. And it doesn't matter if you're a star sport player or you're just learning. It's kids being out there, being able to have the field space to be able to play for 60 minutes a day. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of research out there that shows the impact. Let's make Milburn a first-class town, first-class fields, and have the kids have better facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I come back up for a second one? Okay. You have a problem?
Mr. Bell.
Mr. Thanks. I also wanted to support Mr. Wolk. That meeting last week was fantastic. I think you did a great job hosting that meeting. The police chief did a fantastic job taking in the suggestions from the residents. I was there. And like Mr. Wolk said, I think it would be great to see some progress on some of these public-private alternatives, making sure in the short term that there is more police or private people driving around the streets in these areas that we notice there's a problem. It is super clear that there's a major problem. And, there's crime in every town, there's different levels. We know that but let's not make it easy in Milburn. Let's make it hard for them to steal our cars, break into our houses, take our keys, scare our kids. Like, this just should not be the case here. I think simply, thanks for the time.
Hello, committee. How are you all? Yes. Thank you. Miss Eglow, Milburn resident. I am here to speak against the destruction of the par 3 to build 3 fields. We agree that the town needs more fields. However, there are alternatives. We must start with the school's own fields. It is not right that the Board of Ed refuses to spend the money to turf their fields. It is crazy that the principal of Glenwood School vetoed striping that school's field to include a cricket pitch. What was his reason? Nothing was being destroyed. When I was mayor, we talked about many alternatives, and the library field was selected because the town owned half of it. It cost $800,000, completed under budget and ahead of schedule. Paid in full by the township, not bonded in under 6 months. That field can be used year-round by both rec and the schools. In fact, last Thursday morning, the middle school kids were walking to the library field because the closer grass field is closed for the winter. Many of the town's fields are often put out of service for aeration, seeding, wet conditions, and to rest, to protect from overuse. Well, a turf field can be used year-round with little or no maintenance. I sat on the Joint Field Faculty Facilities Committee. That committee has members from REC, the TC, and the Board of Ed. I know there was a plan that was drawn by Mr. Hogan several years ago that would turf the back of the high school field into several fields. There were concerns about drainage and, of course, cost, but I do not believe it was a $10 million project. Also, now we hear the entire par 3 is to be destroyed and replaced. Anyone who has golfed there, and this rec commission, who there are members here this evening, surely knows that drainage areas are issues there, and much worse than the par 3. The high school is not as poorly drained as the rec, as the, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable up here. It's so strange. My gosh. Oh, yeah.
You're doing great.
You're doing great. Okay, the message is clear. The high school has less drainage problems than the par 3. And you're gonna have to remove a lot of trees. Deer and wildlife make the par 3 their home. Talk about paving paradise. Alex, I hate to call you out, but when you mentioned this to me last year, I thought you could not be serious. Our youngest rode crew for 4 years. We drove him to Rutherford 4 times a week for practice and weekends and out of state for competitive meets. This was our choice. It was our choice when our eldest traveled to be in an out-of-town, highly competitive orchestra. The town cannot provide everything for everyone, but the school must take the mantle and turf their fields first. I believe the Board of Ed may be having a bond referendum next November. Either way, the taxpayers foot the bill. Sanjeev is not here, but I want to say to him, you have constantly stated that fields are your #1 priority. You rejected any discussion to upgrade our town's crumbling buildings, town hall, police, and fire. I want to remind you that these buildings serve every resident, whether they play cricket, golf, baseball, soccer, or lacrosse. We heard the town only has $4 million in debt and could have by law up to $360 million. Many continue to compare Milburn to what our neighboring towns have. Well, our neighbors have all upgraded their town's facilities. They built town complexes with the latest technology, new bathrooms, comfortable seating, and functioning windows. This TC should do the same at nowhere near a cost of $360 million. 2 minutes.
Come on, Di.
The Township Committee should pay for the desperately needed improvements of its facilities with the Board of Ed provide and approve its fields for all our kids. I'm confident that the Joint Facilities Committee can work out a fair and equitable sharing of fields. Please do not destroy the golf course, which, by the way, this proposal does nothing for the poor conditions of the existing schools fields. Lastly, speaking of debt, what will the 100% 75 unit at Main Street add to the town's long debt?
Thank you, Ms. Egler.
Good evening. My name is Frank Sacamandi, and I'm a resident. I would first like to start by saying I agree with the remarks Diane made with regards to the need to preserve the par 3 golf course and find another way to address the need for additional fields. Now, with that said, I'm going to shift gears a bit back to the subject of the fair share housing settlement. Over the course of the last few TC meetings, after residents repeatedly asked why the dump housing project was included in the settlement agreement, we were finally told that the dump project was added to the settlement agreement for the purposes of addressing the unmet need portion of Milburn's affordable housing obligation. Now, we should all understand the difference between RDP and unmet need, but for those of you that need a refresher, RDP must be built, whereas the unmet need can be satisfied via zoning overlays, which is what most other New Jersey towns have done. Now, with that in mind, Maddie, could you please tell us why you decided that
Mr.
our town
Sacamandi,
should build-
excuse me 1 second. I have not given you leave to call me by my first name. You may call me Mayor Miggins or you may call me Ms. Miggins, but do not call me by my first name. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Miggins. I think that you owe us an answer as to why you decided that our town should go above and beyond what's required by the law and build a 100% income segregated housing project on a contaminated piece of soil, as opposed to simply addressing the unmet need with zoning overlay changes, as we've seen with many other towns. Mayor, you were the one in the room negotiating with Fair Share. What was the logic and reasoning behind having the town sponsor an income segregated housing development? Mayor, did you research any other towns' affordable housing settlement agreements before you agreed to what Fair Share had proposed for Milburn? If you had done your homework, you would probably have realized that many other towns, including towns similar to ours that had not built much affordable housing, got much better deals. Mayor, I think our town is owed a response to the questions I have proposed. I sincerely hope that you will take time tonight to answer them, as these are questions that have been asked repeatedly by a number of residents, and you have yet to sufficiently answer them. Also, you are not king, queen, or God. I will address you by your first name if I choose to. There's no law that says that I can't
We are
address you
running
by
a
your
business
first name.
meeting, Mr.
So if you
Sacamandi,
would
and I
like to
have
add
said
that to
to
the
you,
bylaws, if you would like
Mr.
to
Sacamandi,
pass an
you
ordinance,
are out of order,
please
sir.
go ahead and do
You
that.
are out of order.
Thank you.
Hi, Jay Morielli. I'm a resident of Milburn Township. I'd like to start by thanking Committee Member Krupis and the entire Township Committee for reinstating the remote participation option for residents. I'd also like to thank Committee Members Cohen and Romano for meeting with me and other Township residents to discuss safety issues. But tonight I'd like to switch gears a little bit and put forward for consideration some thoughts on zoning changes that I believe would be substantial quality of life improvements for Milburn Township residents. Number one, time and distance increase for planning and zoning board application public notices. Currently, the minimum notice period and distance to be informed of a zoning variance request is 10 days and 200 feet. These are minimums. 10 days is not enough time to get professional assistance to understand the impact a variance may have on nearby property owners. Someone may be on vacation or on a business trip. The time is not sufficient. The 200-foot distance does not cover the range of impact for noise a business may generate. Think live music, outdoor restaurant. Increasing both these would give residents a better chance to assess the impact that a change could have. Number 2, return of the restaurant 125-foot setback requirement in the parts of B2, B, and B3 zones where it was removed. The B2, B3 affected area is a 1.5-mile stretch on Milburn Avenue from St. Rose to Walgreens, and then along Morris Turnpike up to South Terrace. Buildings along this stretch literally go right to the property line of some residents behind them. In 1993, the township recognized residents' concern and enacted a minimum distance requirement. In 2021, in the middle of COVID, the township eliminated this requirement in an effort to reduce commercial property vacancy, which was at 15%. In the 2 years since the ordinance was passed, not a single restaurant opened in the affected areas, yet vacancies have declined to 5%. And this is normal, according to Mr. Grillo. There is no need for restaurants abutting the backyards of residents. Number 3, elimination of the multi-use commercial properties in the B2 overlay zone. Fair Share Housing has approved a 100% residential building on Main Street. It has also approved an entire residential overlay zone in the Canoe Brook Golf Course area. Nothing in the settlement specifies a requirement for multi-use. Multi-use will result in taller buildings with more traffic and noise than a 100% residential building. 100% residential would be preferred by both apartment residents and nearby property owners. Finally, there are many existing 100% residential buildings along Norris Turnpike and connecting Morris Avenue. Finish. Well, we got number 4.
Pat Morelli. Item 4, the modernization of the noise ordinance, making it more objective. This brings Milburn in line with the state noise code. Over 100 municipalities have already modernized. This was put forward last year, but no vote ever occurred. The only concerns raised were residential in nature, people having parties, and if this is a real concern, have the ordinance apply to B2, 3, and 4 commercial zones, properties that are in near proximity to residential property. These 4 zoning changes would provide significant quality of life benefits to Milburn Township residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, very much. My name is Scott Redler. I live at 22 Colonial Way. I've been in town since 2011. I want to thank everyone on the TC right here. You guys are all here because I believe you love Milburn. You know, you want this place to be awesome for your family now and the future families that come move here. And I think everyone in sitting here wants the same exact thing. And I believe that I've tried to also help foster that since being in town, after being a coach, going on the rec commission. It's actually really nice to hear Diane speak because we've worked together. And I remember coming to her when I said, hey guys, you know, we don't have a turf field in town besides the high school. That means every field that we have is grass, and when it rains and it snows, we can't play. Other towns come to Milburn, they say, isn't Milburn supposed to be a great town to live in, or Short Hills? And they laughed at our fields. I think they called the library field the mud bowl or the turf pit. Not even the turf pit, I'm sorry, the mud bowl or the drainage pit, whatever it wasn't nice. So, you know, we got together and we made some common sense solutions that weren't the norm at the time. Okay, we were told that the library, it would reduce the prestige of the library, there'd be too much traffic, and the houses around the field wouldn't want lights there. And meanwhile, the lights are not noisy. They're happy with it. It didn't engage more traffic, and it's the most used field in all of Milburn. So the bottom line is this: I think you've heard the data from Greg and from the soccer club. And this isn't a golf versus cricket. This isn't golf versus pickleball. This isn't golf versus soccer. This isn't golf versus field hockey. This is about what do we need to do in order to have facilities for every resident in Milburn and Short Hills in the next 2, 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And all of you know on this council that you've approved multiple structures going up in Milburn. For whatever reason, it's done. So in the next 2 to 4 years, there's going to be 10% more people in Milburn, Short Hills, something like that. I'm not a stats guy. And we are already 120% over capacity for our fields. So something needs to be done in order to have the right facilities for everyone of all ages, kids, adults, seniors, for everyone. It doesn't mean that the golf solution is the best solution, but the rec department can only control what it can controls. The Board of Ed controls the back of the high school. You guys control JFK Boulevard. The Board of Ed controls the elementary schools. We've tried to get them to change their policy and add fields, and it just doesn't get done. So all of the organizations have to get together to fulfill what a good compromise solution is. If everyone doesn't think it's the par 3, then maybe it's not that, but we need something to be done. So in the next 2, 3, 4 years, we're gonna have the proper facilities for our kids and our residents. If we sit back and do nothing, we're gonna be in a spot that we're gonna be, behind the times once again.
Thank you, Mr.
Good evening, Dave Cosgrove, I'm a resident. I wanted to pick up on two things that we haven't talked about in a while. Towards the end of last year, we were talking about a citizen committee on fair share issues. And I haven't heard anything about that, so I was looking either for an update or maybe just I know you folks are busy, but maybe we could get that moving again. The second item is the noise ordinance. I would like to see that picked up again. And then the third item is just, I don't want to repeat what the Moriarty said, actually, both of them. But I agree with them on the issues they have on that. Would like to see that move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove.
Hi, everyone. Jason Miller, I live at 21 Richard Drive. I'll be brief. I know that we were speaking about the fields. I'm just going to add a couple of stories. So I have 3 kids. I've been in town since 2003. I have a daughter the same age as Greg's daughter, and they play soccer together. So they played for Milburn Soccer Club, and we played at the Wyoming fields at the Wyoming school. I mean, if any of you have seen that field, it's a mountainside. It's not a field, it's a mountainside. We had to line the side of the field with parents because every time the kids kicked the ball, it went down the hill. There's roots that come right through the field. But if you take a look at the library field, that was a great solution, right? Look at the use that has. So there are ways to take existing property and tremendously improve it. One other story, the back of the high school, I'm sure can be tremendously improved and utilized far better than it has been. Another story, also Milburn Soccer Club. We had a team that refused to play when they saw the condition of the field. There were literally, and probably still are, holes in some of those fields that make it really dangerous for kids to run around. That's just unacceptable. So I think there are lots of solutions. We need more fields. I think that's clear. We may be able to do more of that with existing land, better utilize it. I think the library is a good example. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, my name is Don Abraham, Milburn resident. Thank you for your time and your volunteer efforts, really appreciate it. I have a few comments regarding the field, topic we've been discussing a lot tonight. I've been a Milburn resident for about 10 years now. Had a chance for my children to go and experience all aspects of recreation. Been a coach for the Little League, for baseball, had a chance to coach for Melbourne lacrosse as well. Kids are currently in the high school, and frankly, fields at this point are less of an issue, but still an issue. Professionally, I spend my time as a futurist. I spend my time helping companies think about the future and what they should do about it. And it's clear to me that this town could benefit from a little bit of long-range planning when it comes to fields. From a recreation perspective, the issues we've got today are not going to go away. They're not going to get smaller. The fields aren't going to get better magically. And we don't know how to balance these issues because we have competing interests. This idea of golf versus other sports is probably the wrong debate, as others have said. Instead, it's a question of what are the priorities of the town? What does the data tell us in terms of the needs of the town? And how do our kids benefit from all that we have provided in terms of our environment, the neighborhoods, the schools that we cherish so much? And yet it is kind of sad to think about our inability to provide fields for them to play. We know that play, from a mental health perspective, is one of the most important things we can do for our kids. And yet here we are debating, gosh, is it going to be this sport or this sport? As a former coach, I can tell you there were plenty of nights when I had no idea when practices were going to happen until possibly minutes before or even after we had a field available to us. So as a result, we've got a challenge right now that's only going to get more acute and frankly more challenging in the years ahead, which is how do we take a sensible view of all of the challenges the township currently faces in light of the limitations the township also has, so that we can create a fair and equitable solution that prioritizes, frankly, tomorrow's leaders, our children. So I look at this with a very simple view and say, we need to have a fairly rapid task force here to try and figure out how do we balance these issues in a clear way. I'm biased in that I'm very much on the side of the children should win this question. I've played golf plenty of times in the par 3. I frankly could care less if that goes away. That's not the point. But I can tell you that as a former coach and as a parent, the needs right now are significant. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Milburn Township Committee. Give me 1 second. My name is Christine Best and I am a resident. I'm going to try to run me through this quickly. Maybe I'll get through it this time. Do you know what the RF reading of your cell phone is when you held it against your body? When it is a few inches away or a couple of feet away? Do you know that all companies post some type of disclaimer about RF cell phone radiation, including Apple? Perhaps you haven't read their disclaimers. Did you know cell towers companies do this too? Why is it that other types of cell installs in our town do not have these? Did you know that there are proven studies showing this worldwide? Would you hold your cell phone against your head all day, every day in the same spot? In the new California state guidelines, this is giving, there have been some new RF cell phone safety tips, such as keeping your cell phone away from your body, reducing cell phone use when the signal is weak, reducing the use of cell phones to stream audio or video, or when downloading large files, keeping the phone away from your bed at night, and removing headsets when not on a call. Would you sleep next to a microwave oven every night? The answer is no. Yet cellular installations in our town give off the same or higher frequencies within a certain range all the time, and our residents are not given the option to turn them off with a timer or take a hands-free call to limit their exposure. Our residents are also not given informed consent, the same way you would get that informed consent when taking an X-ray in a medical facility. My tri-field meter, which I have here, and I've walked around town at different cell installations and utilized, is actually a very high quality reader. It only goes up to a certain level. It is quite accurate, but it can only measure up to a certain level. So that means that these towers and installations could be giving off more than what I disclosed this evening. I want to talk about 2 cell towers, and I hope you'll listen to the whole thing. It's not that long. The cell tower in the church on Hartshorn and Parsonage Road this weekend at dusk had the following readings: a peak of 19.959 and a low of 5.579. It pulses, okay, different frequencies depending on what's going on. That reading was taken in the middle of the road in front of the church, okay, probably 120 feet away, I'm guessing, from the installation. I went I went down to a white new construction house. I don't have the house number, that's abuts the church, and there were readings as high as a 19, almost as high as in front of the church, and a low of 4.46. I highly doubt these people are aware of that are moving into this house or buying the house. The house on the corner of Hartshorn and Mohawk had a low of 1.46 and a peak of 9.25. So you can see it obviously reduces as you get further away from the cell tower. probably a quarter of a mile away, and as a fast estimate. Even further down Hartshorn, I was picking up readings of a 7.5 peak. In many Milburn Township neighborhoods, there are also almost 0 RF readings, thank goodness. In my neighborhood, it's like 0. So that's the difference. There's no equity in this equation here. I was wondering, Mayor Miggins, since you're a seasoned high-end real estate champion, do you think that homeowners are required to provide radiation level readings of their homes now, like radon readings? Could they be held liable for non-disclosure on issues like this? In your expert opinion, how much would this devalue the selling price on a % basis? That well-known iced tea mansion right across from the church, I wonder if they are aware. I wouldn't live there if you gave it to me for free. I want to quickly talk about the cell phone. I saw 3 men that got extra time, and I am claiming bias, okay? Can you please let me, I am, I counted. Can I please finish this? This is actually an important public safety issue, and you've allocated a lot of time to the golf course. Thank you. The small cell node installation with the cabinet on the White Oak Ridge Road and Hartshorn Drive surprisingly gave off high radiation readings, even though there were less cells on this tower. There's only 1 node, okay? What was disturbing to me was in the parking lot, close to the Hartshorn School building, okay, where there's tons of children, we're all talking about kids tonight. I got a peak reading of 19.9 and a low of 1.874, almost like as much as by a more major cell tower on Hartshorn. Has the township disclosed to all the Hartshorn school families that their children have RF frequencies present on their school grounds? Did you know the country of France, Belgium, Spain, and Israel have limited or banned Wi-Fi? Just Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi gives much lower readings off. In schools? Do you think entire countries are conspiracy theorists? I wonder what the owners of the houses like 99 and 95 White Oak Ridge Road think if they knew Miss Miggins, I'm sorry, were present. Will they find out the hard way with the cancer diagnosis 5 years later? Aren't you legally required to give informed consent for these radiation levels as the cell phone companies like Apple, Google, and Samsung are required to? I can read an excerpt. I'll send you this email just to give you an example of Apple's excerpt, okay? And I'll send you this. Thank you very much.
Good evening, my name is Jerry Kung. I am a resident. I just wanted to follow up on Frank's question regarding the unmet need. Could you just name any other towns that are building 100% affordable units as part of their unmet need? Specifically the unmet need, because I know Madison, Chatham, they have 100% affordable, not 75, I think it's 30 or 40. But those are for their RDP obligation. I'm just curious if there's other towns, and it'd be very helpful, we keep asking this question. We might stop asking the question if we get an actual answer to it. Are there any other towns that are building 100% affordable units as part of their unmet need? 75 or more, similar in size to Milburn, that would be very helpful for us. This is mainly because we don't understand why this mechanism was chosen as opposed to overlay zoning. The only clue that we have is that Ms. Miggins stated in the middle school last year that the goal during the negotiations was to get the densities as low as possible. Yet in our settlement agreement, we have densities as high as 40 units an acre. So are there other towns similar to ours that have overlay densities of 40 units an acre? Because if you're going to tell us that accepting the dump project allowed us to lower the densities, yet we still have higher densities than we see in other settlement agreements, then it just doesn't add up. So we're not trying to be disrespectful, we just want answers to some pretty reasonable questions. So hopefully that seminar on fair share housing will give us some clarity here. I wanted to segue into one of the larger projects in the settlement agreement, which is the Annie Says project, 150 units, although I think the plans actually say 149, so yay, 1 fewer unit, on Essex Street and Milburn. Thank you for posting the traffic impact study. I noticed it was dated June 28th, 2022, almost 10 months ago, I think, almost 10 months ago. There's a few questions regarding this traffic study. I took a cursory look at it. One interesting thing I would be curious about is the historical number of incidents involving pedestrians at that intersection, or say within 250 feet of that intersection, just because that would give us good context as to one of the things that we really need to be caring about. Will the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board be notified and or deliberate on this traffic study impact plan? Given that this study only took data from a single day, it was like a Thursday in June of last year. COVID conditions have changed. There's more people out on the roads. I think multiple data points would be very useful considering there's going to be a lot more apartments in that area. On page I, it says it's going to generate 823 less, it should be fewer, vehicles a day versus current or estimated. Is that 823 fewer, is that compared to what's currently there, which is a vacant office space, which shouldn't have any cars going in and out of it? So I'm just curious there, there's very little backup in terms of this traffic impact study. So I'm curious to see what comes out of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I would like for you to address me as doctor. I have never given you leave to address me as Mr. Cohn. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Jean Pasternak. I want to laud Mr. Abraham, he's left, but for his comments. At the last meeting, I called for strategic planning and long-range planning effort for the township. And he stood here and gave you an objective professional explanation as to why this is critical. I'd like to ask you, Mayor Miggins, would you please form a subcommittee on strategic planning for the township and include residents with relevant experience such as Mr. Abraham? Will there be an option for our land use boards to do Zoom virtual meetings to allow for more resident participation? Regarding the PAR 3 meeting, will it be virtual on March 1st, or is there going to be a separate Zoom session? Are both the sessions going to be recorded for later viewing? I am in support of preserving the PAR 3, but I also agree that the township needs to recognize and address the need to support our children, as so many people here stated tonight. There needs to be a comprehensive research and feasibility study done about all the possible options, their costs and benefits, and a statistically valid survey of residents as to their preferences. This is the logical next step before moving forward with the PAR 3 town halls that will be based on a single presentation and choice presented by the Department of Rec. And as you liaise with the Board of Ed, and as they are contemplating a referendum this year, perhaps the Township Committee can suggest that they allocate money to fix the field problems. Fair Share Judge Santamaro invited the concerned Milburn residents group to intervene in the case, and it is my understanding that the judge is waiting for the town to respond. Can you let us know when that response is expected? On the bill list, I noticed the town is paying for transcription of township committee meetings. Why do we need to do this, and is it required by law? I was listening to the SID meeting last week about the commercial solid waste collection, and I'm wondering, is there going to be an ordinance? If this is implemented, I'm wondering if residents that live in the buildings that are going to be assessed or have to pay for their garbage, are they going to have the right to sue for reimbursement because they're being treated differently than other residents? The PAR 3 again, can we have the data that backs up the presentation? How can residents validate the presentation without the data and be able to substantiate those conclusions? And lastly, I learned from a friend who lives at the Upton that there's a drag racing problem occurring around the buildings. How is the township addressing this and ensuring the safety of the Upton and all residents who traverse a busy Fennerin Way next to the mall? Thank you. Somebody else. Hello?
Is he speaking? Who is it? Who is it? Ms. Urso, would you have to accept, we've promoted you to speak if you wish. Is there anyone else in the room that has anything to say? for public comment. And then we'll see if she comes on. How about we do it that way?
Charlie Dwyer, Short Hills resident. I'd just like to say, field situation is obviously very, very important. And for those that may recall, even the turf fields at the high school where that was raised, all public raised money. So it wasn't the high school put anything into it at all. It was raised, it was turned over to them after the contracts and after the building was done. So yeah, go back to it. School systems got to participate in these conversations at the end of the day. So it is very important. We know this community is going to grow. We need the fields for everybody's use. One thing I'd like to, say, and this may be more rhetorical than anything else, words matter. And we use the words, and we've heard this over and over in a number of committee meetings from various folks, the dump project. And you have to ask yourself, am I stigmatizing people by utilizing that word? Dump project. No matter what goes there, we're stigmatizing anybody that may live there just by utilizing that word, dump project. So I'd like people to think, words matter. Think about what you're saying along the way before you actually say it and categorize something on that front. Whether something gets built there or not really doesn't matter at this stage. But think about it before you start using certain words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Ms. Urso? Ms. Urso? Anyone else for public comment? Ladies and gentlemen? I will now close public comment period. At this time, our professionals and committee members may directly answer any questions made by the public. So please only direct answer questions that you may wish to comment on. Do not request anything from any members or professionals. We're not dialoguing or debating. If anybody in the public does have any questions, please, you can contact any of us up on this dais. We have email, send us an email. Be more than happy to respond to you. Mr. McDonald, why don't I start with you? Are there any comments you wish to address?
I'll just address the comment about the field meeting on March 2nd, or the question, I guess, which was whether it's going to be recorded. Because we expected a large crowd, we will be in the library. It will not be recorded, or there will not be a Zoom option. However, we do plan on having a second meeting that will be fully either partially remote, like in town hall, or fully remote. But for the time being, I think it's important that we get our community together and have a discussion. As I think we stated, this is a discussion and not a necessarily a done deal. It's an idea, and we hope to have a fruitful discussion like we did the other week with the public safety. So that's the start, and we'll have another meeting.
Anything else?
I mean, we keep getting asked, and I guess I will address this partly, but we keep getting asked why we are having someone else write the minutes. And I would just like to point out that part of that is because our clerk's office is inundated, quite frankly. We did put together a little bit of data, but it's necessary at this point in time for those minutes to be outsourced. So and I don't think there's anything else that I'm going to address directly, although I appreciate Dr. Kung's comments, specifically on whether the PSAB will be involved in, and he says, I also think his comments are certainly well directed to the planning board, and perhaps they're, and that study is certainly done by the developer and not the township. And there may be an opportunity for the township to do its own study there. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Prupus, do you have any comments?
A few. The SDL portal, perhaps at the next meeting, we can do a little, Jessica and Mr. Rowland can do a little presentation on how that works and operates.
Sorry, can I just jump in on that?
Yeah.
Because this has been around for a while. We have discussed it a couple times, but it's always good to have a refresher on it. On the homepage of the website, it says file concern. And that you click on that and you can file a concern without signing into SDL. But you can also sign into SDL and then you can find out, you know, we always get questions of what zone that particular property is in or how many permits were taken out on that particular property. That SDL portal has all that information, but you do not have to make an account to file a concern.
And I think we've done a tutorial, a brief one, so if we can do that again, that would be great. Sure. The commercial solid waste Title 14, that, what's the path of that?
So
Or changing it or an
yeah, so
ordinance
we're putting, we had the public discussion with the commercial property owners on February 16th. We are putting together some changes to that, draft changes to that will go to the township committee. But yes, but chapter 14, I think for a much cleaner way of doing this, and not only that, but addressing other issues that we have with solid waste pickup, that will be the path.
Okay. The field at JFK, which we had talked about, I think for almost 2 years now. Is that something that we've had any discussion with the rec committee about, and maybe just like moving forward with that field quickly at this point? And is that something that we can here talk about? Even with the rec committee, just as a township committee to say, hey, we've been talking about putting a field there. Let's just get a field.
I mean, there are certainly other considerations with that particular space. And again, I think that's the importance of having the discussion, and much to Mr. Abraham's point, understanding, you know, holistically where the town wants to go with this. I, you know, can offer my own thoughts, but again, I think should be all part of the discussion.
Okay. I guess
when they have that meeting, that should be
right,
something that comes up.
I guess my larger point is that what are the other options that are realistically available to us sooner than later in terms of getting some fields, maybe not 3 fields, if that's not the path that we're gonna go down right now, but at least 1 field going. So, or just, and I don't know, is the rec commission then gonna alter, or the rec department gonna alter that presentation to include other options to be discussed other than just par 3? Because they had that one slide in there, but they weren't really like flushed out about feasibility.
Yeah, I think they put those in there because this has been a multi-year, you know, process and looking at various fields, lease options, things like that. But to quite frankly, I think, you know, as part of a community discussion, you know, all of this should be brought forward again.
Right, like we just need to also have it be other options discussed at that meeting.
Mm-hmm. And we'll provide additional information or rationale as to why those options weren't pursued.
Got it. And I'm wondering if there's a way for people to submit either comments or questions prior. So the meeting date is set for March, when is it?
2nd.
March 2nd. So I'm just wondering if there's like, we can get an email address up or something that they can send to the rec department, questions, suggestions, comments, even maybe like prior to the meeting, so that they can start thinking about how those questions can be addressed or things can be discussed. So it's not just, so it can have like a little bit more movement coming out of the meeting.
Sure. Yeah, we could put that with the notice.
Okay, and to set that up and then put it on the did we invite the Board of Ed or someone from the schools to this meeting to make sure that somebody from the schools is there? And can we do that, and who would do that?
We have not.
I think it's really important that we contact the schools tomorrow and get them to the meeting.
I'm going to concur with that. I think that's so many of the people that came up here tonight were talking about the schools, the fields at the schools, they're not getting utilized. They get cut out last minute, they get told they can play on them last minute.
Yeah, so we should invite them.
I don't disagree.
That's all I got tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Krupas. Mr. Cohen? Nothing for you. Ms. Romano?
I'm gonna agree with what Ms. Pasternak said. I think we should have a feasibility study done on all the available property that we have to work with as far as fields. I can't see us having an information session if we don't have all the information.
Well, I'll throw another thing out there as well, is that the township, when we talk about strategic plan and we talk about forward planning and things like that, we actually have a master plan that is required every 10 years to be updated. However, there are elements of that master plan that do not get updated as frequently. Some of you may understand that now they are going through a historic element of the master plan that hasn't been updated since 1991. A very similar thing occurs with recreation as well.
So do you know when the last time the recreation had?
1991.
So maybe we could do, maybe we can do an update of the master plan where the rec is concerned, like we're doing with the HPC piece of it. And would that go in front of planning as well?
Yes.
Okay. And who would initiate that?
You can be either one, planning board or the township.
Okay, that might be something to do as well, long range plan, since it hasn't been done since 91. I think that's a great
Should
idea.
probably invite the planning board to the field discussion as well.
Right, so that they see that coming. That's a good idea. Thank you, thank you. Mr. Mariziti, sir?
Yes, Mayor, I have two quick things to talk about. There's been a question about whether the township has an admission against interest with respect to the Whispering Woods issue. And that sounds so exotic. What is the Whispering Woods hearing? And I thought I'd just talk about that a little bit, because Whispering Woods is the name of the lawsuit, the case that gave rise to the requirement in cases involving settlements of municipal land use matters go back, for example, to the planning board for a hearing when there was originally a hearing that led to the decision that was brought through the litigation. I'm going to defer to Mr. Cantor as to whether such a matter would be required with respect to the fair share matter. I do not think so. Certainly do not think that there's any admission against interest as reflected in the resolution concerning the return to the virtual meeting. The other thing I wanted to mention is the reference to the dump site. And what should be clear is that the dump site is not the phrase that would be used once there is a construction of a residential building on that site. It would not be legally possible to develop a residential building on a site that did not meet the requirements of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. The site, if it's contaminated, and to the extent that it is contaminated, will be remediated before anyone moves into that building. That's a requirement of environmental law in the state of New Jersey. I've experience with that all over the state. There are projects, many places in the state of New Jersey, that are built on sites that were once contaminated. And part of the function of redevelopment, which is an area of practice of law that I am particularly focused on, is to remediate the site. And that's a function of redevelopment. So I take the comment that was made, and it's an appropriate comment, because it's not an appropriate way to refer to the site, because it will not be contaminated when people are living there.
Thank you, Mr. Mariziti. Consent agenda resolutions. The Township Committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regard to any items listed on the consent agenda?
I have a question about 23-073.
Wait, I'm sorry, 23-073.
073.
20, okay.
And Alex, I had sent you an email and it's understood that you can't respond to everything, it's fine. But can you just explain the process or the reason why you went with this auditor over our past auditor?
So, yes, we went out to RFP for auditor because in the past, as a municipality, we have been criticized for not looking at auditors more frequently and not switching auditors. As some may recall, we had an auditor at one point for 10 years. And so about 5 years ago, we switched to Nisabatia, who are a great firm and who did a great job. However, we felt that with PKF, they also offer a very similar service. They are a large firm that can provide the type of needs that we have here in Millburn. They've presented well, and I think they'll be a good fit for us. And so that was the impetus of the change, was to make sure that we're keeping a rotation on the auditor. You know, that can be looked at, I guess, both ways, but I think a while ago we were criticized for not changing auditors. And that's what.
Got it, thank you.
Any other questions? May I have a motion to approve resolution 23-070 through resolution 23-073, which are listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Lucas.
Yes.
Ms. Romano. Yes. Mayor Megan.
Yes. Resolution 23-074, authorize remote public platforms and policies for Township Committee business regular meetings. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to resolution 23-074, which was also listed on the last agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve resolution 23-074?
So moved.
May I have a second? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Lucas.
Yes.
Ms. Romano. Yes. Mayor Megan.
Yes. We have no matters listed for old business, but we do have a matter listed for new business, and that is, Mr. McDonald, would you please discuss the National Historic Designation of the Short Hills Train Station and the Parcel House?
Yes, I'm just, I'm seeking a discussion with the Township Committee about designating both the westbound and eastbound train stations on the National Registry, as well as the Parcel House. Both of these historical properties in which the township owns have quite a bit of upkeep and necessitate more attention than what has been given to them over the years. In particular, the Short Hills train station has had a capital project that's been deferred a few times with repointing the bricks in a historical manner. And we feel that the designation on a national scale will afford us a lot more opportunity for grants and larger grants that will help cover the continued maintenance and upkeep of those two particular buildings. I think that in particular, the Short Hills train station is very important to continue the upkeep. And these designations will assist us in securing more grant funding. Yes, there are matches to those grants. However, you know, it will make a $500,000 project certainly more palatable when it's 250,000 coming from the township and 250 coming from a grant. And so I was just looking for, and I should also note that in speaking to the Township Historic Preservation Consultant, Barton Ross, he had mentioned that our potential for acceptance on the National Registry is high because both these buildings were recently or more recently designated at the state level. And so really what I'm looking for is just consent to move forward with what would be a $25,000 spend, $12,500 for each building to be properly presented to the National Registry for designation. But happy to answer any questions. If I know them, I will certainly answer them. And if I don't, I will certainly get you the answer.
So there's an opportunity, I guess is what you're saying, for us to get some major grants if these are designated on the National Historic.
Yes.
Okay.
Currently, I mean, there are grant opportunities. I don't want to discount the fact that being state registered doesn't offer grant opportunities, or being a certified local government does not offer us grant opportunities. However, these are large grants that will help with what is an expensive upkeep, especially the Short Hills train station, where Now, in any of our lifetimes, we shouldn't have to put another roof on those buildings, but the roof on the eastbound train station costs almost $400,000. So to make it historical, to make it, look the way it does, which I think looks beautiful and they did a great job, but those are expensive endeavors. So we want to make sure that we're able to keep these buildings in the shape that they should.
Okay.
Is it a one-time fee to become part of the registry?
Yes.
Any other questions? We have consensus to have that done then?
Well, I mean, I would like to have a discussion, I would like to have public input before I give my vote. I would like to hear like opportunity for the public to say what they think in terms of whether or not we go ahead to do this, before I vote on it, so.
That's your, okay?
Yeah.
Michael, you're happy to vote on it? Annette?
Yes.
Happy to, you are as well? Okay, I am as well. So that's consensus.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll keep the committee updated on the progress.
So there doesn't need to be a resolution, it's just an approval.
No, this is a spend within under the bid specification.
And what is it, 40,000?
40, okay,
Yeah, but it's actually 44.
44, okay. Yeah, I thought you said 25. You said
Yeah, this is
25.
25. No,
44
no,
is
44 is
the
the cap.
resolution.
44 is the cap,
Sorry.
but this is a 25 spec.
Right.
Okay, awesome, okay. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?